Welcome to Athens Happens. I'm Ben Peters, a news editor at The New Political. Athens Happens is a weekly news podcast brought to you by TNP reporters dedicated to explaining the nuances of Athens and state politics. You can find new episodes every Friday at thenewpolitical.com, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, or wherever else podcasts can be downloaded. This week, we're going to take a look at more than 30 recently released university documents that contain substantial hazing allegations against Ohio University Greek life and student organizations, and the final city council forum where candidates discussed public concern with a permanent location for the Athens Farmers Market, as well as a potential change in law that would allow Airbnb to come to town. We'll also touch on an Athens tenant town hall where local renters aired their grievances with city rental housing conditions to candidates running for local offices. Ohio University recently made public more than 30 documents containing hazing allegations against student organizations, including fraternities, sororities, and the Marching 110 band. Allegations detailed in the documents range from severe to completely insignificant. I'm joined by staff writers Eric Bohl and Zach Zimmerman. How are you both?
Doing great. How are you, Ben?
Cool.
It's rainy weather today, and I hate it.
Yeah, it's not nice out. It's not nice at all out. Okay, so before we go into all of this, just give a brief overview of what's happened here at Ohio University in the past few weeks.
All right. So taking it back to 2018, we had the death of freshman Colin Wyant, who was a pledge of Sigma Pi. Sigma Pi later got expelled off of campus and kind of barred from ever returning. And then at the start of October, we saw Acacia, which I believe was around like September 30th, September 31st. And then Alpha Epsilon Pi, which I believe came on October 2nd, we saw them get suspended. And then a few days later, we saw the university announce the IFC suspension, the Interfraternity Council, which suspended the 15 fraternities on campus who are members of that council.
Correct.
And then ever since then, we've seen the sorority allegations, the allegations against the 110, the rugby team, and the business fraternities come out. And 2 weeks ago, at the Greek Life Town Hall, Jenny Hall-Jones, who is the Dean of Students at Ohio University, announced that the allegations would be given to the media and to the public following a change in the law.
Right, a change in law that requires them essentially to provide the documents of allegations.
Yes.
So before we go into the detail of these 30 documents and all the allegations levied against these organizations, can we talk about the university policy of what exactly constitutes hazing?
So, according to administrative policy, hazing includes, but is not limited to, any action or situation which recklessly or intentionally endangers the mental, emotional, or physical health or safety of a student, brutality of a physical nature, coerced consumption, and acts intended to cause mental stress, coerced activities, and acts of sexual misconduct, relationship violence, or stalking. That is basically the Ohio University policy for what is hazing.
Okay. And so who can report hazing to the university?
So anyone can submit a report anonymously through the university's website. It's on community standards. They have a place where you submit a report. You can submit like 3 types of report, be it community standards, sexual misconduct, and a third type I'm conveniently forgetting. And the only exception to like the reporting anonymous thing is staff members of the university who are mandated reporters have to declare their name when reporting because it is part of their job.
So if you are not a member of a organization, you can still submit a hazing report against them.
Yes.
And according to university policy as well, once a report is submitted, the university will automatically suspend that organization.
Isn't that a recent change in the policy?
Yes.
Yes.
So let's go through these allegations. There's a lot here to unpack.
Yep.
So where are we going to start?
So we're going to start with Lambda Chi Alpha and Pi Kappa Psi. So these are the 2 fraternities who are alleged to have participated in quote-unquote Hell Week. And Hell Week entails being locked in a basement for a week. You're not allowed to bathe, sleep at home, do homework, or go anywhere except for class.
Okay.
Notably, Lambda Chi Alpha allegedly held a party despite being warned it would violate the suspension issued against them. And this report was filed by Ariel Tarosky herself. So, yeah, that doesn't look good.
What else?
So, next we have Beta Theta Pi, and someone alleges that they saw them pulling trunks of drugs out of their fraternity house due to the rumors that the police were going to be conducting raids on the fraternity houses. There are also allegations that they forced the pledges to clean the house and drink excessively. They were locked in a room and interrogated until they broke down. And quoting the report exactly, they would lock them in a basement for days and make them listen to the same song for hours or just have them sit there blindfolded. And they would also make their pledges get up at 4 a.m. and run 5 miles.
So we should also note that all of these documents containing the allegations are partially redacted. They've redacted the names of the people who have submitted the reports in accordance with FERPA laws.
Yeah.
So what is next?
So next is Sigma Chi, and a student told their professor that they could not participate in out-of-class events due to their commitments to their fraternity, that they would have no time to go to events that this professor presumably had planned. And there are also allegations that pledges were forced to work out. More specifically, they were forced to haul around kegs and do wall sits while getting their feet kicked out of them by members, or having members just in other ways try to get them to just drop to the ground. And it is worth mentioning that they had to do wall sits for 15 to 20 minutes at a time.
We should specify that they were alleged.
Yeah, these are alleged. These are all alleged.
Yes.
There's also an allegation that they had to carry around a weighted dummy named Butch, which they had to take care of and bring to events. And it also alleges that the organization would hire strippers from Columbus to come down and perform for the new members.
And so now we have Delta Tau Delta and Theta Chi, who had identical descriptions on the documents. I mean, verbatim, word for word, had the exact same allegations.
Yeah, so they are word to word the same allegations. So the report that was filed for both of them describes how new members were required to carry a small fruit on them at all times, such as blueberry, lemon, lime. You get the point. When an initiated member saw the new members carrying the fruit, they are able to take the snack or smack it out of their hands, and the new member is then required to carry incrementally larger pieces of fruit around campus, progressing eventually to a full watermelon.
It is worth noting that Delta Tau Delta was reprimanded for this.
How so?
So if you go to the university's website, which they put out for monitoring the status of these student organizations, and you go to sorority and fraternity organizations, you go to Delta Tau Delta, and it does say they were issued a reprimand, and effective date for it was October 22nd, so last week, and the end date for the reprimand, it says not applicable. So the investigation into them presumably has been finished. Yeah, judging from the website.
Right. So the business fraternity, Phi Chi Theta, what are the allegations against them?
So the allegations against Phi Chi Theta is that female members were asked to take the shirts off of the male members and then were to sit on their laps. This is the business fraternity, Phi Chi Theta. This was they were also reported by Jenny Holt Jones for pieing a pledge. Do you want to further explain that?
So
incident?
Jenny Holt Jones had received a text from a colleague that a group was out on College Green advertising this fundraiser where they, you pay however much money and you pie somebody, presumably, judging from the description. And
pie as in throw a pie in their face.
And Jenny Hall Jones went out to them to talk about it. A student actually asked her if she would like to sign up and pie a pledge. She explained to them who she was and told them that it could be considered a form of hazing. A student asked her if he could sign some form of consent form, sign a waiver, and Jenny Hall Jones reiterated that hazing cannot be considered consensual under any means. And next up is Acacia. So a student wrote a journal entry saying they cleaned a journal entry in like their UC 1500 or 1900 class. I can't remember the exact number.
I believe it was a 1500 class, university college. This was for a university class they were wrote an assignment for, essentially.
Yeah. And they described how they clicked with just the members of the fraternity and how they cleaned the house, quote unquote, as part of our hazing. A sorority member also heard weird noises coming from the house, and when she asked a member, they said it was the start of our hazing process.
Yeah, so for the assignment one, the direct quote from the assignment that this kid turned in to his professor says that on Monday night, all 25 pledges and I went and cleaned 5 houses as part of our quote-unquote hazing, and what sounds like a rough time just brought us closer together and made us push through the work. University employees, including graduate assistants and student employees, are required to immediately report allegations of hazing the minute they learn about them to the Office for Community Standards and Student Responsibility.
Yep.
So that is how this was reported. It was done by a university employee who read this student's assignment and then blew the whistle and sent that report in.
Yep. And then, so after Acacia, we have Alpha Epsilon Pi, which they received their cease and desist on October 2nd. They were one of the first. And they were reported by a grad assistant, who heard that they made members wake up early to text others the daily weather report to the point of exhaustion.
Yeah, he heard this overheard in class.
Yes.
He heard students talking, and then because of this university policy that requires them to report it, it was then reported.
And then Alpha Kappa Psi, the respondent claimed that they were at a party, they were offered alcohol, and they declined, and they said that they felt uncomfortable when they were offered alcohol. That is the main basis of the allegation.
Yeah, so the direct quote from this report says, "I felt as though I had to drink to fit in or still be a part of the organization," the report said. "It made me feel a little uneasy knowing that there have been so many incidents recently, so I just wanted to speak out."
It's also worth noting, like right before that line, it says, "Although I wasn't forced to drink, it did make me feel uncomfortable." So they were not forced to like consume alcohol.
Yeah, it just made the presence of alcohol and the other people drinking alcohol around them made them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. So next we're going to go on to the 3 sororities.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the allegations against the sororities all come from one report made against them. They just divided it up in the document by organization and then redacted the parts that didn't apply to that specific organization.
Yeah, they're all written in a very similar fashion. Some of them verbatim have the same language.
Yeah. So with Chi Omega, the only allegation against them, and I'm quoting the document exactly, is Chi Omega forces girls to do drugs almost every rush. And that is the only allegation made against them. It gives, a lot of the reports give like days, times, more specific events.
Yeah.
It is one sentence.
Yeah.
And that is the only thing about Chi Omega in this entire report. Then following up on that, we'll look at Delta Zeta. And I'm going to call them DZ because Delta Zeta is a bit of a mouthful. So DZ, the allegation against them, which comes from the report, doesn't actually name them in the first one that contained like the 3 others. So they say, "My hazing as a freshman resulted in more than one broken bone and a bad incident with bullying and depression." Now following that up, there's like another email, which I assume might be from the same person elaborating, but we don't know for certain.
Yeah.
And they say, "I was a member from 2012 to 2014. The hazing, abuse, and bullying I endured resulted in my hospitalization, dropping out of OU, as well as the sorority. This was brought to the attention of the university and the national chapter at the time, and nothing was ever done." So I don't know if those are from the same person, but it is noting that they both have allegations of like abuse and just bad treatment.
Harm to their mental health.
Yeah. and like hospitalization, so like broken bones.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the last sorority on the list is Pi Chi Theta, and it alleges that they make girls sit on dryers nearly naked and circle fat in Sharpies.
So like drawing on each other, essentially.
Well, yeah, like circle the fat on their bodies in Sharpies.
I see. Next, the Marching 110.
Yep. So the Marching 110, one of the allegations against them is that members are forced to burn holes in their uniforms. And one of the reports describes how this actually happened to a member while they were wearing it, and like someone used a lit cigarette to burn the hole in their uniform. There's also allegations of like a very toxic drinking culture, and that members have to drink and party or otherwise they will be shunned. There is also an allegation, and this is quoting the document directly, they had the
shit beat out of them.
Yeah, the shit beat out of them by other members.
Yeah.
There is also a tradition that is the dirtying of jackets, and members were allegedly like forced to roll down hills, or they were like pushed to roll down hills, or they just, you know, did it on their own. And essentially like they want to dirty their jackets so it'll look like more vintage. It looks like they've been here for a while. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's very much so like a cultural tradition. And then we have a mud pit.
Yeah.
So with the mud pit, it's a member's house in their backyard. They essentially take a hose, I'm assuming, and just make a big mud puddle, which members will like wrestle in. So like you wear your jackets, you go and find some person, you just wrestle in the mud so your jackets get dirty. You also can like slide through it while wearing your jacket. And it is notable that students came and talked to Dr. Richard Suck. I believe is
He's
his
one
name.
of the directors of the 110.
He's one of the directors of the 110. So members would came and talk to him, like student leaders, I believe is their title.
Yeah.
And that it was two of them, and they came up to him and reported in the fall of 2017 and 2018 that they would gather a fellow student's house and do the mud pit. And he told them that so they assured him that like it was optional and that few chose not to participate, so like students had the choice of not participating. But he told them that was besides the point and that it didn't comply with the instructions given. That so they in 2014 they learned of this tradition and decided that it would be best if it was supervised. So the tradition was like allowed by the university. They just had to have a member of the university staff there to observe it, and they didn't have any members of the staff there to observe it.
I see. And last but not least, the men's rugby team.
So the report against the men's rugby team alleges that the team would force its members to drink and then strip down. They would then run around naked, and they would have to, quote unquote, tag a car with his genitals, is what the report says.
Yeah, it also indicated that the person who reported the organization said that it wasn't the first time they had heard of forced drinking within the organization.
Yes, that is correct.
So before we finish up this segment, I wanted to go through, the university released a statement Thursday, the day before they released all of these allegations, and basically just gave an update on the status of every Greek life and student organization who have been embroiled in this this saga.
Yeah.
So currently all sanctions have been lifted for Phi Gamma Delta, Phi Delta Theta, Pi Kappa Alpha, Phi Kappa Tau, and Delta Tau Delta, while Delta Epsilon and Sigma Phi Epsilon had sanctions lifted conditionally, but the conditions of both organizations' reinstatement was not specified. Beta Theta Pi, Lambda Chi Alpha, Phi Kappa Psi, Sigma Chi, the men's rugby team, and the Marching 110 still remain suspended and under active investigation by the university, and the university conducted meetings with the student organizations in question after suspending all the fraternities within the Interfraternity Council on October 3rd, and the investigation is still ongoing. The university may decide to lift or impose additional sanctions on the organizations as more information is uncovered. Thank you guys so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben.
Have a good day.
After the ad break, we'll be back with digital editor Sarah Donaldson and staff writer Abby Neff to discuss the final City Council form.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maggie Prosser, editor-in-chief here at The New Political. Each and every day, I work alongside reporters, editors, producers, and managers who put their heart and soul into the journalism we produce. Here at TNP, we have the honor to tell the stories of the residents of this small town we call home. We're looking for local businesses and other ventures to help us continue funding for our independent journalism, including the podcast you're listening to right now. TNP would love to advertise for you through our website, our biannual magazine, or right here on Athens Happens. If interested, please send an inquiry email to execedit@thenewpolitical.com for more details. We hope working together can support both your initiative and fuel TNP's strong, reliable, and essential journalism here in Athens.
I'm joined by digital editor Sarah Donaldson and staff writer Abby Neff to discuss the final City Council form before Election Day, where candidates discuss tourist housing and a permanent location for the Athens Farmers Market. How are you both?
Doing well, Ben.
I'm doing okay, Ben. You know, it's a little rainy outside today. We're starting to get into that sad winter weather, even though it's just November, but I'm good otherwise.
Yeah. Sad.
Sad.
Seasonal affective disorder.
So, what did the candidates discuss at this final forum?
So, candidates really wanted to reaffirm their commitment to the city of Athens and why they would be a good fit to represent community members. Since it was the final forum, they really honed in on the fact that they care about the city and their legislation will help Athens become a better place. The forum was hosted by the Far East Side Neighborhood Association at the Athens Community Center. Some questions that were asked from the audience via note card included questions about a red light camera on East State Street. Apparently that street gets a lot of speeding.
I thought it was interesting, too, just to jump in with the East State Street. They're trying to curb speeding, I guess. I didn't realize the road sees about 34,000 cars per day. It's a lot of cars for, such a small town.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised by that number also. The council members also discussed housing discrimination based on income. So landlords can currently reject tenants with Section 8 housing vouchers, which the majority of the candidates agreed that they would push back against that ordinance, where the only candidate that didn't was Peter Kotsis. He did not have any comment.
Peter Kotsis is a landlord.
Yes, he is. And so is Sarah Grace. But Sarah Grace was very for banning that ordinance. They also, a question was asked about Kroger and their no fee ban on plastic bags. A sales tax will appear on the ballot for Athens voters. It's like 0.25% for the city. And candidates were asked if they were negotiating with county commissioners, what points would they make on behalf of the city to share the revenue with the city. And also in 2016, these are just a few other topics that were discussed. In 2016, voters passed a city income tax that would provide funds for emergency medical services. And candidates were asked how they would deliver that promise to voters. Ellie Hamrick made it a point to say that she wanted as little money to go to the police in Athens as possible, so she didn't really address the question necessarily.
It's been a theme in Ellie Hamrick's campaign to denounce the local police force. She's gone and said that she wants to disarm them and abolish them. So your reporting suggested that a really big topic of debate here was the public concern with a permanent location of the farmers market. Can you give me just some background about what that is? I'm totally unfamiliar with this.
Yeah, so the city actually does have an ordinance in place that states a space must be provided for the farmers market, but the farmers market currently resides in the Athens Community Center parking lot. And Sarah Grace made a point to say the city does not provide a permanent space. She claimed that a parking spot is not an appropriate place for a farmers market. So the Project for Public Places, which is like a nonprofit organization, is set to visit the city next summer to collaborate with residents on a public space for the farmers market behind the community center, like in that grass field. And it is funded by a previously acquired USDA grant, and council members and community members alike are worried that there won't be enough input from Athens residents. Like Pat McGee made a point to say, you need to be accountable Athens residents and come to us with your grievances. And along with Sarah Gray, she said, it's the council members' job to listen to the community members, but it's also the community members' job to speak to their council members and have an open dialogue. And some members of the community have also reached out to Chris Monday, expressing concerns about having the permanent location near the water treatment plant because of a foul smell in the air, which could deter customers from visiting the farmers market.
I don't know if I'd want to be buying my lettuce right near the, water treatment plant, but I thought that was definitely an interesting point to be brought up.
Mm-hmm. Beth Clodfelter also suggested that council members release surveys for community members to give input, while also saying that the farmers market was a gem of the Athens community, in her opinion. One interesting point that I did not know, she mentioned that the majority of SNAP cards, which is like
food stamps
in Ohio, are spent at the Athens Farmers Market. I did not know that.
How often is the Athens Farmers Market assembled?
So it's every Wednesday and Saturday. And Wednesday, I think it's from 9 to 12, and the same thing on Saturday.
AM?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beth Clodfelter, she kind of slipped into in regard to this farmers market, and she said she wants to set aside 1 hour per month if she's elected, where anyone in the city can come and talk to her about any questions or concerns about the city and like what they have.
So also a real hot topic of conversation, and I understand that Athens residents are not happy about this, is that the candidates were discussing Airbnb and other tourist housing options coming to Athens.
Well, it kind of seems like it is a pretty divisive issue.
Yeah.
And Peter Kostis said outright, no tourist homes in Athens, and the entire crowd actually started clapping. I mean, I can't give you a number on how many people in the room started clapping, but the forum kind of broke up in that moment. So you can tell that it's either people are heavily one way or heavily the other, it seems. And some of the concerns were brought up was that, Athens has a neighborhood community feel. And if you've got these tourist homes in Athens and you've got people coming in and staying at the home for the weekend and maybe sitting on the porch and drinking and stuff like that, it kind of deters from that neighborhood feel, because you don't really know your neighbors because people are in and out, staying in and out. So that was one of the concerns that was definitely brought up by at least Pat McGee and I think several other members of council.
Was were any of the members in favor of bringing, more tourist housing options into the city?
So, not necessarily outright. They wanted to find ways to kind of skirt around it. Ellie Hamrick, for example, made a point to say that Airbnbs were on the forefront of gentrification nationally. However, she countered that by saying Airbnbs make housing more affordable, and homeowners have the right to do what they want with their property. But if you're a renter, your landlord can stop you from having an Airbnb. Chris Monday suggested a city-run Airbnb website that allows revenue from Airbnb residents to go back to the city in some way. He didn't really elaborate on that. I think he just suggested it.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like an on-the-spot suggestion or thought from Chris Monday. It was almost like a local form of Airbnb.
Yeah.
But yeah, Abby, I definitely agree with Abby in that it seemed like everyone at the forum was either outright against it or kind of I'm against it, but also I'd be willing to look into it. But there was not a single person at that forum that was yeah, I want Airbnb. No one was outright heck yes, let's do this.
Were there any other big moments at this event? Any exchanges between candidates, maybe a particularly provocative question asked by an attendee?
Honestly, not really. One woman did yell at Pat McGee to hold the microphone closer to his mouth.
She was very upset that she could not hear.
Yeah.
Pat McGee was about 2/3 of the way through the forum, and she said, "Pat, put your mouth closer to the microphone." And I said, I really appreciate. And one of the things that Pat McGee said that I loved at the forum was he said, you as constituents make your displeasure known, and I applaud that. So it sounds like people in Athens are really reaching out to their council members and telling them what they do like and don't like about what they're doing, or at least some community members.
So yeah, I guess not necessarily. Most candidates were very cordial with one another, and even supported each other's claims throughout the forum.
Is there anything else either of you want to add to this forum? Any other additional, tidbits, any fun facts? Something that, maybe somebody who wasn't at the event like myself would want to know?
The moderators were whispering and on
could
their
hear it.
microphones
That was so
throughout the
funny.
entire forum. There was this giant speaker, and the moderators, I think Alan Swank, who's the vice president of FINA, he was just whispering the entire time, and Sarah and I could hear it. And I don't think he knew that other people could hear his whispers. So
He wasn't saying anything bad. It was just
No.
in regards to like keeping the forum going. But
Yeah.
like everyone, the first time that we heard them whispering, Abby and I were both like, oh my
where
gosh.
is that sound coming from?
Yeah, it definitely took the full 2 hours, though. And I think one thing that was interesting just about the setup of the forum, and Alan Swank mentioned this at the end, they didn't really put time limits on candidates at all in all of their responses. And they kind of explained it at the end that they weren't putting time limits because they wanted people to like kind of get their views out there, or candidates get their views out there. But at the same time, they kind of told them like, be respectful of the other candidates. And I personally think that like all of the candidates really did. Like no one like took an exorbitant amount of time to get their view out. I thought everyone was pretty respectful of everyone else's time and stuff. I think the only time that the moderators put a time limit on the candidates was for their opening and closing remarks. And it might have just been their closing remarks, but so I thought that was something that was interesting, because I feel like on the national stage, when you see that type of stuff, it's like kind of like heavy like time limits or cutting people off or stuff like that. But at this, it was very just like a kind of like free flowing discussion.
Yeah, I think that some of the previous events were a bit more cordial.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, this was my first one, so I didn't really know what to expect, but
It was also my first one, so it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having us on.
After the ad break, staff reporter Eric Bull will return to discuss a recent tenant town hall where Athens tenants raised grievances with their landlords to local candidates running for office.
Hey all, Sarah Horn here. I'm the digital manager at the New Political. And if I had to pick the best decision I made as a college freshman, joining this outstanding publication would be it. At TMP, I've had the experience of creating both compelling written and digital content. My understanding of local politics has also immensely improved. TMP makes integration between written and digital work for staffers a priority and offers a unique opportunity to have a wide portfolio of clips. Not only that, but working for this publication helped me land an internship in Washington, D.C. as a digital productions intern for The Hill. Our publication is award-winning, independent, nonpartisan, and run by a dedicated team of student journalists. Apart from its content, the New Political has brought me some of my closest friends. The people who I work with make my job fun and fulfilling, and they never cease to amaze me with their kindness, collaborative spirits, and humor. If you too want to join the New Political, come to our all-staff meetings Sunday evening at 7 p.m. in Scripps Hall 210, or reach out to me at shorne, shorne, at thenewpolitical.com.
Now, we're going to discuss a recent tenant town hall where local renters aired grievances about local landlords and rental housing conditions to candidates running for local offices in Athens. I'm joined with staff writer Eric Bull, again, who attended the event.
Thank you for inviting me back on.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you back 2 in a row. You were on like last week and I think the week before. I think you were on twice the week before too.
Let's go. I'm trying to speed run this. I'm trying to get like the record for like most podcast appearances in a single semester.
So, what was this tenant town hall?
So the tenant town hall was hosted by the Athens Revolutionary Socialists, which is a socialist group on campus.
Yeah.
And it was to just discuss tenant problems and to potentially organize a tenants union.
Which is something that city council candidate, at-large candidate, independent Ellie Hamrick has discussed the possibility of for quite some time now.
Yes. So Ellie Hamrick, Chris Monday, and Damon Crane all showed up to this town hall.
So both Ellie Hamrick and Chris Monday, city council candidates, Damon Crane, mayoral candidate.
Yes, they all showed up to the town hall.
All 3 independents, all 3 self-describe as democratic socialists as well.
Yep. So the town hall started off with 30 minutes to discuss various grievances these tenants have had with current landlords or past landlords. Chris Monday notably touched on bedbugs and how much of a pest they are and how hard they are to get rid of, and how some leasing contracts, I believe what they're called, require like the landlords to be responsible for bedbugs. Others are, difference varies between contract.
Sure.
There's also a discussion that Chris Monday touched on also with the pest thing about how he has mice and how he disposes of them in a non-lethal way, gets them in the trap, takes them to the park, and lets them go.
Yeah.
But it was still discussing about how it's a problem. He's talked about, I believe like 15. He's got 15 mice was the number he used.
And he lives in a rental property?
Yes. I believe so.
Do you know who owns the property that Chris Monday lives in?
I do not know that.
Okay.
There was also a discussion about the failure of landlords to fix various issues with the houses. So rotting wood on like porches, rotting siding, etc., as well as the struggle for tenants to get their security deposits back.
Yeah, the security deposit, which is a fee you put down up front when you sign your lease, and then after your lease is up, they will return the security deposit to you. Usually they're about $500.
Yeah. So there was a lot of discussion around security deposits because a lot of people felt like they were cheated out of their security deposits.
Right.
And that, like, one person described how someone who, when they first moved in, they found a bowl and a spoon. And they left that bowl and a spoon there when they left, and they got their security deposit docked for that.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of discussion around security deposits and how to just try and get them back. Some people were like, it's a bygone conclusion. I don't pay my last month's rent just to try and recuperate some money.
Sure. So what was the format of this event?
So there was, as I discussed, 30 minutes at the start to discuss grievances. Then they split it up after those 30 minutes into groups of 3. Like, you pick 2 people right beside you and you form off in a little group and you talk about various just tenant issues and potential ways to solve them. And then after that, they reformed the group and they discussed like the proposals these groups had, and then they allotted time for the candidates to talk about Slumlord Smackdown.
Slumlord Smackdown, which is, as we've talked about numerous times.
It is part of Damon Crane's platform, which has been endorsed by Chris Monday and Ellie Hamrick. Actually, I'm not entirely sure if Chris Monday has endorsed it. Has he?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I know Ellie Hamrick has.
Okay.
And Slumlord Smackdown is just a way to kind of strengthen the laws to favor tenants and to kind of punish bad landlords.
Yeah, landlords who do not follow housing laws or mistreat tenants.
Yeah.
So where was this event held?
So this event was held at United Campus Ministries,
Okay.
which is is it College Row or College Street? I can't remember the name. College Street. And it's right next to all the fraternity houses, if you know that area.
Yeah.
And this was held in the basement. I want to say between 15 to 20 people turned out for it.
Okay.
And notably, there was one landlord in attendance.
So what happened with that landlord?
So this happened within the first 30 minutes. So when they were still airing their grievances, a person started talking then and asked, are any landlords here? The landlord raised her hand. She later identified herself as Linda Gale Hiller, I believe is her full name. And she has 6 rental properties, I believe. And she was then asked to leave the event by this person. They said that they felt like this was a safe space for tenants to discuss their problems with their landlords, and that her being there violated this safe space. A lot of people there were worried about retribution.
Yeah.
We had to blur out the pictures I took of the event because people were worried that their landlords might hear of them being at the event or see them in the photos, and that they would face retribution from their landlords.
The landlords see them discussing unionization or essentially anti-landlord rhetoric.
Yeah.
And withhold their security deposit or mistreat them in any of the number of ways that landlords routinely mistreat Athens residents.
Yeah. So Linda Hiller then left the event. It is notable that this was only a person asking them to leave and not like the people running the event.
Yeah. So did this person just like raise their hand and say, "Hey, I want her gone"?
Well, no. So the person started telling their story, and then they kind of stopped and paused and said, Just real quick, are any landlords here? She identified herself, and that person then asked her to leave. And the people running the event said it was nothing personal and that this was just supposed to be just tenants. So Linda Hiller then left the event. I went out and got a comment from her, and she basically said, I could have had advice I could have given them, but clearly they don't want me here.
Yeah.
And then I went back in and rejoined the meeting.
Yeah.
And that's when they split up into the groups of 3. Chris Monday had all the city council candidates didn't join the same group. They all were amongst just everybody.
Yeah.
And that's when some proposals were made. Ellie Hamrick and her group, well, no, not Ellie Hamrick's group, Chris Monday's group, touched on the lack of code enforcement in the city.
So there are 9 employees who work for Athens Code Enforcement and Community Development, which is the department responsible for enforcing housing laws in the city. And according to the Athens News, only 4 of those employees performed routine housing inspections in the past year.
Okay.
So Crane and a handful of the other independent or self-described Democratic Socialist candidates are alleging that code enforcement is understaffed and they don't have enough resources to adequately examine all these rental properties to make sure that they are abiding by city housing laws.
Yeah. So then sort of following that, we had them kind of discussing Slumlord Smackdown, which again is Damon Crane's tenants' rights kind of profile, trying to increase the rights of tenants and punish landlords who don't really follow the rules. So Damon Crane, again, so right when his group got done talking, then they turned it over to Slumlord Smackdown. Damon Crane picked up right where his group left off and talked about code enforcement for a while. And then his time to talk ran out, which during Slumlord, when they were discussing Slumlord Smackdown, I believe they gave each city council, candidate or person running for election 2 to 3 minutes. And Damon Crane's time ran out, so Ellie Hamrick picked up right where Crane left off and discussed how some landlords get away with repeated offenses. It is notable that the city recently passed a bill, that has harsher punishments for landlords who have repeated offenses. Then she also expressed her wish to see the city code brought up to at least Section 8 housing standards, which those are really long and complicated.
Yeah.
And that would take way too much time for me to explain. But Section 8 is basically government housing, and they have a lot of standards that if a person brings this voucher here to get this housing, then the housing has to be up to this standard.
Publicly funded housing.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Monday touched on that he believes that some members who are currently in city government could be convinced to support the plan, support Slumlord Smackdown.
Yeah.
Should himself, Crane, or Ellie Hamrick get elected.
Yeah.
And that it could be done. His message was that Slumlord Smackdown can be accomplished even if they all don't get elected.
Interesting.
And then Damon Crane, I got a comment from him following the event, and he talked about how hard it was to get tenants to tell their stories because they're afraid that they may face retribution from their landlords.
Right.
They're afraid their faces might get attached to the story, the name might get attached to the story, and that people are just scared. And lastly, he kind of just described the whole issue with the landlords, and that's being unique to Athens. He said it has a lot to do with the transiency of college students, how people will stay in their apartment for 1 year and then they'll go to a different apartment.
Right.
He also, people are inexperienced.
Yeah.
These are a lot of people's often first time renting an apartment, renting a house.
Yeah.
And they
19, 20-year-olds.
Yeah, and they don't know what to expect from their landlords. They don't know the duty kind of owed to them by their landlords.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I had very little to expect.
Yeah. He also described the issue of the power balance in that landlords have a lot more money and just a lot more power than tenants. Because a landlord could just ignore your phone call while your porch is still rotting wood. And that he's like, you have to reach out to the landlord for help, And if the landlord doesn't get back to you, then you're just kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
And so the power balance was also something he focused on as being a big part of the issue.
Were there any big standout moments other than that exchange between the landlord and the tenant who were there that stuck out to you?
So not really. The landlord leaving was kind of the pinnacle of like the excitement, because it was a very homogenous group, because it was the tenants' town hall. Everyone there was a tenant. Everyone there did have problems with landlords in the past. So there was no one there who was like, oh yeah, I love landlords. Landlords are the best.
Right.
So it was very much so everyone who had been wronged by a landlord showed up to this event, and not many people who like their landlords or haven't had problems with them showed up.
Is there anything else you want to add, Eric?
Just pay attention to the election coming up.
Yeah.
Damon Crane, Chris Monday, and Ellie Hamrick are all on the ticket. And
Same with Democrat Beth Clodfelter.
Democrat Beth Clodfelter, Independent Pat McGee, Democrat Peter Kotsis, Democrat Sarah Grace, Democrat Mayor Steve Patterson.
Yeah.
So just pay attention to the election, and just keep in mind that Slumlord Smackdown is part of Damon Crane and Ellie Hamrick's, and asterisk on Chris Monday because I'm not entirely sure if he has endorsed Slumlord Smackdown, but yeah, that's really it.
Go vote.
Yeah, go vote.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, no problem.
And that wraps it up here on Athens Happens. Make sure to tune in every Friday for new episodes that shed light on the politics that impact all of our lives. Remember, you can find the show on the New Political's website, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and on YouTube in a video podcast format. Also, be sure to check out our website at thenewpolitical.com, where we regularly report stories on what really happens here in Athens, and follow @thenewpolitical on social media. Thank you all so much. Have a great week.